Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. 2 hikers were found dead at the base of a mountain in the Crow's Nest Pass, one of them being a Lethbridge firefighter. The Alberta government announced $4 million to help combat human trafficking here in our province. And we hear about a unique Christian organization that is reaching kids around the world with the gospel of Christ.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. 2 Lethbridge hikers have died just outside of Coleman in the Crow's Nest Pass. RCMP say the overdue hikers were trekking along the North York Creek Trail and were discovered around 7 p.m. on Thursday night. They were found at the bottom of the ridge at Mount Coulthard. A helicopter from Fernie, British Columbia, recovered the bodies of the 2 men aged 34 and 35 from Lethbridge. The City of Lethbridge confirmed that one of the hikers was Greg Godet, a member of the Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services. The other was Jonah Sven, who was an RN and paramedic. A GoFundMe page has been set up in support of both men's families. The Alberta government is taking more action to combat human trafficking. The province will invest $4 million to create the new Alberta Office to Combat Trafficking Persons. Officials say between 2011 and 2021, there were more than 3,500 incidents of human trafficking reported in Canada. Premier Daniel Smith says the operation of the Alberta Office will be led by the nonprofit group Not in My City, Native Counselling Services of Alberta, and Reach Edmonton Council for Safer Communities.
This office shouldn't be necessary, and hopefully one day we will no longer need it. But until that time, this office will bring together survivors of human trafficking with community partners like social services providers and Indigenous organizations who are best positioned to help find a way out and a path forward. Our goal is to create a hybrid model that extends across the province, disrupting and dissolving trafficking networks while helping survivors to recover and rebuild. To succeed, we need to understand survivors' stories and gather insights that help survivors escape and heal. We also need more comprehensive on-the-ground information about how human traffickers operate and how they hide their activities so that we can stop them in their tracks.
Alberta police say 96% of human trafficking victims were women and girls, with 25% under the age of 18. A Calgary Liberal MP says he wants the federal government to halt any funding to the Calgary Stampede. George Chahal says the Stampede has lost people's trust after a partial settlement was reached this week in a class action lawsuit alleging it allowed a staff member at a performing arts school to sexually abuse boys. Philip Herema was sentenced to 10 years in prison back in 2018 for luring 6 boys into sexual relationships when he worked for the Calgary Stampede's Young Canadian School of Performing Arts. Chahal says government funding should only be restored when the victims feel there has been genuine accountability. A couple from Brooks, Alberta say they don't know why they were a target after their home was completely vandalized from top to bottom. The couple has since moved to Drumheller and continue to search for answers, all while trying to rebuild what was going to be their dream retirement home. BCN's Angela Stewart has that story.
They broke the toilet downstairs and upstairs. They broke the sink.
Dean and Lorenda Southern were coming home from a vacation the Canada Day long weekend when they were notified that their home had been broken into and completely destroyed. Every window was smashed, all the doors broken, and appliances beaten. Graffiti even sprayed on the walls along with a broken furnace and central air conditioning unit.
They threw everything out, destroyed the walls, light fixtures, lights. It seemed very planned.
Besides hitting every wall and door, the culprits targeted bathroom toilets and sinks too.
They broke out the edges of the outlets.
The couple had sold their property in Brooks and were just days away from relocating their home to Drumheller when the malicious destruction took place.
And we found out a lot of bad news within a very short period of time, and it's been very difficult to deal with.
Their nightmare didn't stop there. The pair discovered they didn't have any insurance to cover the cost of damages.
The house mover had told us that he had insurance, but unfortunately we found out after our house was vandalized that it was only on structure, not on the actual vandalism.
With plans now halted of eventually turning the home into their dream retirement property, the couple is left wondering why they were the target and still have no answers as to who destroyed their home.
We're not sure what our future looks like now in rebuilding this, but we would really appreciate if anybody knows anything about the case, that they would let the RCMP know and Brooks.
RCMP are investigating, and a GoFundMe page has been set up with over $17,000 raised so far to help cover the cost of damages. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Wow. Well, it was slightly cooler across much of southwestern Alberta again today. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, many would say the cooler temperatures and rain were a welcome sight for our region.
Yeah, well, it's true. A lot of people don't necessarily appreciate all that heat that we've been getting. And our farming friends, of course, really need the rain. And it looks like they're going to be getting more of it because we could see another 30% chance of showers this evening, along with a risk of a thunderstorm tonight. Into Saturday also could see more rain, 30% chance, along with an afternoon thunderstorm. And then we should see more sunshine. But guess what? More rain could be on the way for Sunday. And then we're going to be getting into all the hot and dry weather again during the work week. I'll be back later in the show, though, to give you all those details. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Well, we've seen a little bit of shower activity here in southern Alberta lately, but overall, this summer has been hot and dry. It has gotten to the point where many cattle ranchers have been considering selling their livestock. The Vice President of the Canadian Cattle Association, Tyler Fulton, says the hot and dry weather in many parts of the country has wreaked havoc on beef producers this year.
Again, been another really tough season this year with pockets that are about as bad as it's been in the last decade. We've got a scenario where moisture levels were already deteriorating for several years, and quite simply, that in those areas we've had no moisture, no additional rainfall accrue. So we're talking about less than a quarter of what an average rainfall would be in the growing season, which quite simply isn't enough to support cattle grazing or for that matter make feed for the wintertime.
The Canadian Cattle Association is the voice of 60,000 beef farms and feedlots across the country. Ticks are becoming more and more prevalent during the hot summer months. Now, one thing you can do if you're bitten is head to your local pharmacist, as they can now assess and prescribe medication for tick bites. If left untreated, tick bites can lead to Lyme disease. Symptoms include fever, headaches, fatigue, and skin rashes. Celebrities like Shania Twain and Justin Bieber have been diagnosed with the disease in the past. Loa Manning, a Lethbridge pharmacist with Shoppers Drug Mart, says there are ways we can protect ourselves from tick bites and Lyme disease.
Some basic things are trying to stay on paths and not walking off paths in long grassy areas, because they can even be found in your backyard or even golf courses. So you want to make sure that you wear light colored clothing so that it's easier to see the tick. Tuck in your socks and your shirts. Wear insect repellent that has DEET and other ingredients to protect against that. And then most importantly, when you come inside, you want to check and make sure you don't have any ticks on yourself or your pet. Have a shower if possible, or a bath. And then if you find one, you want to remove it as soon as possible, because they have to be on your skin for 24 hours for that bacteria that can cause Lyme disease to be transmitted into your body. So the sooner you remove it, the better. And you would do that by taking some sharp tweezers and just pulling it directly off. You don't want to twist it or squeeze it. Take a picture of it or save it in a plastic bag so you can bring it to your healthcare professional and they can identify it, because not every tick causes Lyme disease, but want to be safe.
According to the province, between 1991 and 2021, there were 149 human cases of Lyme disease reported. A new trailer to help connect families in southern Alberta communities has now made its way to Milk River. The nonprofit group Family and Community Support Services hosted the Neighbor Good trailer event on Thursday afternoon. There are things like games and family entertainment located inside of the trailer to enjoy. Staff with the FCSS told us this is a great way to get communities together, especially following the pandemic.
We thought that this trailer would be a good way to reconnect neighbors, get people meeting each other, have fun with one another, socialize, build their social networks within their smaller communities. There's lots of folks that are actually moving to small communities since they've been able to work remotely after the pandemic. So that's kind of nice. So this will help people get to know each other and see that their communities are lively and full of fun and family-friendly stuff to do. So yeah, it's definitely really, really important to connect post-pandemic.
The trailer was funded by the Community Priorities Fund grant from the Community Foundation of Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta. You know, there's an organization in Lethbridge which helps support women in a wide variety of ways, including before and after pregnancy. It is called Better Beginnings. Tammy Gramercy is a coordinator with the group. She says they serve women from all walks of life and offer a wide range of supports.
The women that we serve come from all walks of life. And so very, very importantly, we offer non-judgmental support from nurses, dietitians, community advocates. When they come to see us on a monthly basis, we also provide incentives. So Walmart gift cards and farmers market coupons just to help with healthy food choices. We also offer prenatal vitamins for mom and vitamin D for baby. And also lots of information and referrals to other agencies. We're very connected to a lot of other agencies in the area.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Tammy Gramercy from Better Beginnings and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Tourism Lethbridge will now be working hand in hand with Indigenous filmmakers in our region. 2 contracts have been signed to create short-form video projects and social media content that highlights Indigenous perspectives and experiences in the city. The local filmmakers include Jared Wolfchild and Shawanda Bakvat. Thomas Miller, the digital content specialist with Tourism Lethbridge, explained more about this initiative.
They will be mostly in Lethbridge and surrounding area through the different nations and kind of showing all of like the Blackfoot Confederacy. We've got the Blood Tribe really close to us and Siksika, and the projects will mostly be closer to home. We have one on the Warrior Relay races here in Lethbridge, and the other one will be kind of just spotlighting our Indigenous Advisory Tourism Committee.
The 2 Indigenous filmmakers beat out 35 other applicants. Congratulations. And both contracts have been funded through grants provided by Travel Alberta. 2 Lethbridge residents are now the proud recipients of a $15,000 Youth Innovation Challenge Award. The funding is given out by the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. It is recognized by the Canadian Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Stephen Guilbeault, as Canada's newest environmental innovators. Gabrielle Kirk, one of the winners, explained what the money will be used for.
It goes towards continuing our project, continuing our work. So right now we build small-scale aquaponics systems. Aquaponics is just a really sustainable method of agriculture, and we build them primarily in schools to teach youth about sustainable agriculture and just environmental leadership, and really empower them to be able to take action and make change in relation to the environment. And it's just also a really fantastic experiential learning tool where they can do hands-on learning and grow plants and fish and produce all together.
Kirk and Michael Alvarado run Aquaponics World, which is based out of Lethbridge. They were both able to beat out 70 applicants to win the challenge. 2 polar bears at a Winnipeg zoo are being transferred to Calgary. Baffin and Siku, who currently reside at the Assiniboine Park Zoo, are set to be transferred to the Wilder Institute at the Calgary Zoo. Baffin is 6 years old, while Siku is 7. Staff at the Winnipeg Zoo say since they're hitting their social and sexual maturity, it makes sense to transfer them now. The bears are expected to arrive by mid-September. There are reports that almost 2 million people in Burkina Faso have been displaced by extremist violence. Many are Christian widows and orphans. 17-year-old Traoré is one of them. He moved to a safer area after an alleged jihadist attack brought tragic loss to his family. We have more now on this report from the Christian group Open Doors UK.
Sometimes my heart is broken when I think about my father. What is painful is the fact that sometimes you can go somewhere, or sometimes you can be chatting together with other children, and they start talking about their fathers. And I can't say anything, because I do not have a father anymore.
Almost 2 million people in Burkina Faso have been displaced by extremist violence. Many are Christian widows and orphans. 17-year-old Traore is one of them. He moved to a safer area after a jihadist attack brought tragic loss to his family.
It was on a Tuesday, I don't remember the date, in 2019. My father told me to go with him to a neighbouring village to gather grasses for our flock. When we were tying the herds, we heard the noise of motorbikes passing on the road. When they saw us, they made a U-turn and came towards us. As they were coming, my father said we should pray. He did not tell me what to pray for specifically, but as you can imagine, if those men are standing before you, you will not start praying and asking God for food or money. The only thing that matters then is life.
Their lives were indeed in danger. The men were carrying Islamic State flags and started questioning Traore's father.
So while they were talking to my dad, I turned behind our tricycle and left without them noticing. When I had gone a little way, I heard a gunshot and I started running. I hid behind some houses. Then I left. As I was running, my shoes got left behind, and I went back home barefoot.
Traore's father had been shot dead by the jihadists. He was one of 5 victims that day alone. But although Traore misses spending time with his dad, his trust in God has not diminished following the attack.
When he was still alive, we used to go fishing together and do many other things together. But since he has gone, we can't do these things anymore. If you don't have a father, there are things you can't do. But in my sadness, I have never thought that God has forgotten us, because he said that everything has its own time, and he does everything according to his good will. Sometimes a difficulty can come, and I think that if my father was still here, he could solve this problem. But God knows what he is doing, because he said that we should not worry about our lives. Now, if we are facing difficulties, we should look only to Jesus.
There's a unique Christian group that reaches kids around the world with the gospel of Christ. Moses Esteves from Child Evangelism Fellowship says it's their goal to reach 1 million children for God. Esteves says it's critical to teach kids about the importance of God at a very early age.
Children at a young age have a very open heart to God. And, you know, the backpack of sin hasn't been filled up yet, as it happens when the years go on and into adulthood and the hearts become seared. Children have hungry hearts for God. You tell them the truths of God, of the gospel, and most of them readily accept and believe. They have tender hearts. As a matter of fact, the Lord says that for anybody to be saved, they need to become such as a child, which we jokingly say that all evangelism is child evangelism in that sense.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Moses Esteves from Child Evangelism Fellowship and BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our program. Well, we saw some much-needed moisture in Lethbridge earlier today. More light showers may on the way for the weekend. A full look at the weather picture is on deck. We had clouds and some light showers again today across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Roche is now with a full look at the weather picture. Jeanette, the much-needed wet weather may continue into the weekend?
Yes, and initially we were supposed to have hot, dry conditions all weekend, but I think the forecast is trying to make a liar out of me because now it is showing rain and thunderstorms throughout Friday night into Saturday, down to 23 as well, and then up to 30 degrees on Sunday, but still could see that 30% chance of rain. And then we're going to see those dry conditions persist into the work week next week. High of 30 degrees on Monday, 29 for both Tuesday, Wednesday, and then also Thursday there. So we're going to get back into the warm weather. So if you do prefer the cooler temperatures, today's your day, and Saturday as well. So enjoy for sure. Average high for this time of year, 26. Average low, 11:39 was our high temperature on this day, which happened back in 1939. 1995 was the coolest, which was only 5 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 5:56. Sunset this evening at 9:19, giving us 15 hours and 23 minutes of daylight. Okay, on the west coast, looking like clouds clearing by around noontime in Victoria, high of 23, looking at 50k winds in the Juan de Fuca Strait, 24 for a high in Vancouver. Same thing, clouds clearing in the morning, making way for sunshine by the afternoon. In Edmonton, clouds and fog dissipating in the morning there, high of 22 degrees. Same thing for Calgary, high of 22. But Calgary could see a chance of showers tomorrow, along with a 20 to 40k wind. As we look to Saskatoon, mix of sun and cloud, high of 23 degrees, 25 for a high in Regina. And a beautiful sunny day in Winnipeg with a high of 25 degrees as well. Now, there was still a heat warning in effect for Toronto today. That should be cooling off, though, by Saturday. Also, a lot of rain this evening and expected through tomorrow as well, looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Also, a risk of a thunderstorm, 27 for a high of 24 degrees in Ottawa. Ottawa also seeing a lot of rain there. 23 for a high in Montreal, and Montreal could see some showers as well. Now, as we get to the Maritimes, Atlantic Canada, looking to Fredericton, 25 for a high, seeing that 40% chance of showers. Halifax, clear skies, but high of 28. Cooler along the coast, though, if you don't like that heat. 26 for a high in Charlottetown with a mix of sun and cloud. And windy in St. John's, 30 to 50k winds, also a 40% chance of showers there with a high of 26 degrees. There you have it. That is your forecast.
The number of job vacancies in Canada continues to drop. The number of unfilled positions fell by 26,000 in May to 759,000. That's the lowest level in 2 years and is down from a peak of 1 million in the same month last year. Stats Canada says the job vacancy rate, or the number of vacant jobs relative to the total number of positions, also hit a 2-year low, falling to 4.3%. Job vacancies decreased in 6 sectors in May, including healthcare, social assistance, and food services. The new information suggests that business owners are having an easier time finding workers as the economy slows and higher interest rates take hold. TC Energy is planning on splitting into 2 companies by spinning off its crude oil pipelines business. The Calgary-based company says the move will result in the creation of 2 publicly traded companies. Industry analysts say it will look more like a utility company with a focus on natural gas infrastructure, along with nuclear, pumped hydro energy storage, and new low-carbon energy opportunities. The new business, which will be based in Calgary and have an office in Houston, will focus on enhancing the value of the company's existing 4,900 kilometers of crude pipelines. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 133 points on the day to finish at 20,519. The Dow was up 176 points to 35,459. The S&P 500 was up 44 on the day to 4582, and the Nasdaq was up 266 points to 14,316. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 58 cents to $80.64 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to $2.64 U.S. Gold was up $13.18 on the day to $19.59.19 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 20 cents to $24.34 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.43 per bushel, barley's at $9.14, canola's at $18.41, and corn is at $10.26 per bushel. Live cattle were up 10 cents to $178.15. Feeder cattle were up 95 cents to $245.60, and lean hogs were up $1.18 to $103.20. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 75.54 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, 2 Lethbridge hikers were found dead just outside of Coleman in the Crow's Nest Pass. RCMP say the overdue hikers were trekking along the North York Creek Trail and were discovered about 7 o'clock on Thursday night. They were found at the bottom of the ridge at Mount Colthard. A helicopter from Fernie, British Columbia recovered the bodies of the 2 men aged 34 and 35 from Lethbridge. The city of Lethbridge confirmed that one of the hikers was Greg Gadet, a member of Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services. The other was Jonas Swen, who is an RN and paramedic. A GoFundMe page has been set up in support of both men's families. There's an organization in Lethbridge that helps women in a wide variety of ways, including those who are expecting a baby. Tammy Gramercy, coordinator with Better Beginnings, will share more details in an interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher shortly. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The Lethbridge International Air Show returns July 29th and 30th at the Lethbridge Airport. Gates open at 9 a.m. This family-friendly event features crowd-pleasing aerial performances, exciting displays of planes, jets, and helicopters, plus a food truck fair, monster truck rides, a kids' playland market, and trade show. So much to see and do at the Lethbridge International Air Show, July 29th and 30th. Do you have a heart to serve our community? The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen is looking for volunteers to help prepare, serve, and clean up after meals that are given every day. The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen's mission is to help alleviate the struggle of poverty for individuals and families who are poor, have very limited income, or just in need of a hot meal. They also desire to increase public awareness of the needs of the poor and homeless in Lethbridge. For information and to volunteer, visit lethbridgesoupkitchen.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Well, there's an organization in Lethbridge which provides invaluable support for women who may be facing various challenges during a crucial stage of their lives, from those seeking health choices during pregnancy to women feeling alone or isolated, or those living on a low income or even facing language or cultural barriers. Better Beginnings is there to lend a helping hand. Tammy Gamrasi joins me to talk more about the work of Better Beginnings. Tammy, welcome to Bridge City News. Now, you are a registered nurse and you're actually the coordinator of Better Beginnings, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and it sounds like Better Beginnings does a whole heck of a lot. You offer so many services. And is this all free of charge to the client? It's through Alberta Health Services, right?
It is, yeah. So Better Beginnings is a fairly long established program, been around for over 25 years now, and it is a free supportive health service.
Okay, awesome. You know, do you go through referrals? How do women actually hear about you initially?
It's a great question. Sort of a few different ways. So absolutely anyone can just call us directly to see if they do qualify. If you did call the program, what that would look like is a nurse would just answer the phone. She'd probably ask you a few questions about sort of like just what your circumstances are, ask you about your pregnancy, and then just make sure that you qualify and you're eligible for the program. And then from there, she would book you for an actual intake appointment. And at that intake appointment, that's where we would explain the program a little more in depth, get some more information from yourself, just so that we know moving forward how to put some more supports in place for you. We also get several referrals from other agencies, from other doctors' offices and nurses, of course, with clients' consent. Sometimes we get those calls. And so what that would look like is we would just call you back and again, go through that whole process and just ask you if you wanted to be part of the program. So again, it's completely voluntary as well. It's a free program, but it's also a voluntary program.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And are you only located in southwestern Alberta, or are there locations everywhere?
So Better Beginnings through AHS here is, so we're in the southwest area, which includes, of course, Lethbridge, Cardston, Coaldale, Crowsnest Pass, Fort McLeod, McGrath, Milk River, Picture Butte, Pincher Creek, Raymond, Tabor, and Vauxhall. So anywhere there's a public health office, there'll be a Better Beginnings nurse available there to reach out to. But there are other programs funded the same way throughout the province.
Right. Okay. No, well, that's good to know. And I know that you're definitely online, so people can go online and check it out. Now, how does it work? Do the women have to come to you, to your office? Can you meet, I guess, virtually, online? I know these days everything's online, but.
That's a good question. So we actually, once you do qualify for the program, everything is in person. So we have the women come to, so if it's Lethbridge, it would be the train station here. Or again, if it was a rural site, it would be that public health office there. So the whole point of the program is, that we support you in your pregnancy. And a lot of that is that face-to-face care, right? So yeah, it's definitely face-to-face.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's get into the specifics here of what your support actually is. So what sort of help can you offer pregnant or parenting women, I guess new moms?
It's a great question. So we, of course, offer lots of information on pregnancy and parenting, specifically, or very importantly, absolutely non-judgmental support. So the women that we serve come from all walks of life. And so very, very importantly, we offer non-judgmental support from nurses, dietitians, community advocates. When they come to see us on a monthly basis, we also provide incentives. So Walmart gift cards and farmers market coupons just to help with healthy food choices. We also offer prenatal vitamins for mom and vitamin D for baby. And also lots of information and referrals to other agencies. We're very connected to a lot of other agencies in the area. So lots of referrals as well. And also free pre and postnatal classes.
Wow, oh, that's fabulous. So what would you say is the most felt need by expectant moms when they come to Better Beginnings?
Oh, that's there's a lot.
I'm sure there's a gamut. Right?
There is really so who qualifies for the program is anyone who, so of course we see if you're a teenager, you qualify immediately for our program, no questions asked. So we also deal with women who, just are struggling social, emotionally, or physically, right? So living in low income, women who've already maybe had a premature baby, maybe they're at risk for poor nutrition. So they're having a hard time either financially or physically getting enough food to eat. Substance abuse. So if you're struggling with substance abuse, maybe a history of mental health disorders, new to Canada, even just limited social supports, just you're new to town or maybe you are the first person in your whole family and your friends to have a baby and you don't really have a lot of support in your life, or even just wanting to cope with the stress of pregnancy. So we see a wide range of needs that come to us.
Yeah, wow.
So, yeah, hard to pin that question down with one need, but there's a lot.
Oh, I can imagine. Okay, so what specific services do you offer women facing challenges related to a low income? Do you have to be low income to qualify?
So lots of referrals, lots of help with setting them up with other support services that will kind of help follow them or help set them up with financial support. The financial support that we offer specifically here isn't large, right? It's not the Walmart gift cards and the farmers market coupons are certainly not enough to support themselves, but it's enough to just help out with maybe formula or baby supplies or whatever is going on for that mom. So it's a lot more referral-based services financially specifically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if a young lady comes to you seeking help like this, so what's the recommended starting point for her?
She can just call us. So wherever she is in the zone, just call the public health office and just say, I'd like to sign up for Better Beginnings. And from there, if she gets a voicemail or just someone will call her back and set up an intake appointment, again, to see if she qualifies and set up an intake appointment with her.
Okay, no, simple enough there. Okay, so how does Better Beginnings maybe address those language and cultural barriers to ensure that women from diverse backgrounds receive adequate support?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So of course, because we are HS and we provide service to, everybody in the province, we have access to language lines. So we have access to a multitude of translators through that. So we actually do see a lot of new Canadians in our program. And the way that looks is we actually contact language line with the language that we are needed. And we'll actually have an iPhone and we'll just have them on speakerphone. And so we can have that conversation happen right between us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I would imagine that you offer all kinds of assistance in making healthy choices during a pregnancy. And I believe that there's a dietitian involved, right? So maybe explain the dietitian's role in this Better Beginnings relationship with this young lady and how they provide nutrition advice to pregnant women.
So we are connected with Alberta Healthy Living Program, which is another program through Alberta Health Services. And so we have dietitians that we work with, and we refer clients. Most of our clients, actually, we refer to the dietitians. And at that appointment, the dietitians can help that mom one-on-one, whatever her situation looks like. So it's not necessarily, sort of a set program that they'll go through with the moms. It's really client-led. And so whatever that mom is sort of struggling with, or whatever she really wants to sort of, whatever information she needs regarding nutrition, whether it's for her own health or introducing solid food to baby, or anything like that. So we'll refer them for a one-on-one dietitian appointment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and changing your diet or lifestyle for the benefit of a baby coming into the world, it definitely requires a whole new way of thinking, especially if you're a brand new mom and have never experienced it before. So is there maybe some guidance or advice available to change the mother's focus to thinking about options and choices for not just herself, but for a new baby, I guess, coming into the world?
Yeah, well, and actually, I should say, for talking to a registered dietitian, it doesn't just have to be a Better Beginnings client. Anyone who just wants to know more about healthy eating, pregnant or not pregnant, can access that, a dietitian at Alberta Healthy Living. But the new Canada Food Guide, if you've seen that updated food guide, it's really great. There's a lot more emphasis on a variety of healthy food or healthy vegetables and fruits, rather than just sort of set limiting food. So there's lots of different options that women can look at there.
Mm-hmm. Would this maybe also include changing the way of thinking and acting around the home as well? Do they offer guidance for that?
Yeah, all kinds of guidance, depending on what that looks like, right? And the reality of the situation, because for a lot of people, and it might just be, how do I access healthy food on a low budget? Because not everybody has the privilege of accessing healthy food, just buying a whole bunch of extra healthy food. So dietitians are very mindful of that as well, and just helping people access and change their diets, again, depending on their specific situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How does Better Beginnings maybe help women who want to quit smoking during pregnancy? I would imagine that's really a tough one.
That's a really, really tough one. Often they'll make sure that they talk to their doctor about that conversation is a really strong one with their physician. There's also a program called Alberta Quits that will help refer women to that. Again, depending on where that woman is at and what level of readiness she is for quitting, they'll help her with that if that's where she's wanting to.
No, excellent. Are you able to share some success stories or examples of maybe how Better Beginnings has positively impacted the lives of pregnant women or new moms?
There is one I can think of. We did have a mom who came in, and this one always sort of sticks in my head. And when we first met her, she came to us transient, so she didn't have a home to live. From out of town, she came to Lethbridge. Was dealing with addiction issues, mental health issues, and obviously no housing issues, income issues. Also had a warrant out for her arrest, so was sort of dealing with that. And she was, I believe, about 14 weeks pregnant on top of all that. So you can see how when we see clients, the pregnancy is a big part of it. There's also a lot of other things going on. With that. So with that mom, a lot of our focus was really getting her supported with some one-on-one support, some home visitation support, making sure that advocate who was working with her helped advocate for her so that instead of going to jail, she went to treatment, because that's definitely a better place for someone who is having a baby. And just really worked with her addiction issues, of course, set up dietitian appointment with her. And at that point, I remember her saying, we were talking about her diet and sort of where she was at that point. And she said, well, so far today I had a banana and a Coke, and of course, non-judgmentally, that's where she's at. And she said, to be fair, when I was in the depths of addiction, that's what I would eat in a week.
Right.
So that's great. That's our starting point. And so She obviously saw a dietitian. We had her set up with a postpartum mental health therapist, who we also work with. And so just really put a lot of supports in her life. We're not here to really solve all of her problems one-on-one, but really as a community and the community supports we have, put all those supports in place for her. She also got free prenatal classes with us. So her and her partner were able to come to prenatal classes. And the nice thing about that is a lot of our staff actually the staff in Better Beginnings also teach those classes. And so that's a familiar face, right? And less intimidating to do a group when you know the nurse, you've talked to her for a little bit. So she did prenatal. She delivered a healthy, drug-free baby boy, exclusively breastfeeding. She ended up doing postnatal classes as well with us, and just began to sort of build a new community around her of other moms in those postnatal classes. And was still being supported really well through addiction and mental health. And so that mom, I saw her when her baby was 6 months old, and she was talking about, going back to school. And so that's not everybody. We don't, depending on where people are at. But that's a really good example of someone coming to us with a multitude of other things going on in her life. And the pregnancy is important, but getting a lot of those other factors in her life sorted out first is just as important.
Oh, absolutely. What a fabulous success story that is. That's just wonderful. And what a wonderful program that you're coordinating there. And it looks like we are unfortunately out of time here, but Tammy, thanks so much for spending some time with us today to explain what this wonderful program is all about.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. That was Tammy Gamrasy of Better Beginnings, and non-judgmental supportive health services for pregnant or parenting women through Alberta Health Services. And she, of course, is the coordinator of that program and a registered nurse. So happy to have her on today.
Jesus teaches in the Bible to share the gospel with all people around the world, including children. And today's guest certainly thinks so. We're joined by Moses Esteves. He's the Executive Vice President with Child Evangelism Fellowship. Moses, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and Child Evangelism Fellowship, or CEF.
Sure. I was born in Portugal and was saved as a child at age 9. At age 17, I had a calling for ministry. It's a long story how I ended up in the U.S. working with Child Evangelism Fellowship now for 30 years. The ministry of CEF started in the early 20s when our founder, Jesse Overholzer, had a passion from God to evangelize children. The ministry actually got organized in 1937. And he 15 years later, he passed away, and by then we had ministry started in about 60 countries around the world. Today, we have about 3,500 full-time staff. We're organized in most nations of the world. We have 400 offices in the USA, and the CEF family, with the help of thousands and thousands of volunteers from local churches, is very busy communicating the gospel of Jesus Christ to the next generation.
Well, that's amazing. Why do you feel that it is absolutely key to share the gospel with children?
Well, we're moved and mobilized by the words of the Lord when he said, "Let the little children come to me." Actually, Psalm 78 has precious verses concerning children where he says that he wants the next generation to hear about the Lord. As a matter of fact, in verse 6, he says that the next generation may know them, the commandments of God, and to know God, the children yet unborn. So he's got a burden. God has a burden for the generation that doesn't even exist yet. And arise and tell them to their children. So now he's talking about two unborn generations, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the work of God and keep his commandments. So as you read through the scriptures, you see just this passion that God has for the children to know him, for the children to worship him and walk with him and experience all the wonderful things God has for them. That comes clearly in the scriptures, especially Matthew 18:14, that said, "It is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish." So God desires children to know him.
Now, kids are really impressionable, and I think that's a big reason why we should be reaching children. But what would you say to those who may argue that it isn't acceptable to present religious teachings to children as they aren't old enough to make these kinds of choices for themselves?
Well, if you look into the scriptures, you actually see a moment when that happened, when Jesus had children around him and he was ministering to them, and the disciples showed up and began to shoo the children away. And Jesus said, no, 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 let them come to me. So God desires for us to minister to children at a young age. Children at a young age have a very open heart to God. And, the backpack of sin hasn't been filled up yet, as it happens when the years go on and into adulthood and the hearts become seared. Children have hungry hearts for God. You tell them the truths of God, of the gospel, and most of them readily accept and believe. They have tender hearts. As a matter of fact, the Lord says that for anybody to be saved, they need to become such as a child, which we jokingly say that all evangelism is child evangelism in that sense.
Now, you have a very ambitious goal, Moses. You want to reach 100 million children per year with the gospel. So tell us, how many children have you reached so far, and in how many countries?
Sure. We have the ministry organized in most nations of the world. So we have a massive structure in place. Again, 400 officers in the USA, and we've been doing this since the 1930s. And in 2019, so that was the year before COVID, we reached 25.5 million children with the gospel. And 93% of these are face-to-face ministries, a trained teacher with literature, CF literature, ministering to children in a small group or large group of children. And of course, COVID was a real problem for face-to-face ministries like ours. And so after COVID, we've been rebuilding the work. And of course, some countries got devastated by COVID. Last ministry year in 22, we were able to minister to 19.5 million children. And so we're on our way to grow that rapidly. Think of your vehicle with multiple accelerators. We have a lot of these things in place, the tested programs, the expertise, the workers, the organizational structure. So we're accelerating different things like Good News Club, which is our weekly Bible club that we hold in schools and many other locations. We're accelerating a Christmas outreach that we do that's unbelievable. The kids love to come to Christmas parties and hear the true meaning of Christmas. We're accelerating, for example, children reaching children. You take the older kids, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, that are Christians and committed to the Lord, and you take them aside and you train them how to share the gospel. And watch out, because we're doing that in several places around the world. We're accelerating, and they go out boldly telling the story of Jesus and sharing the gospel with their friends. Sometimes adults are a little hesitant. Well, kids are not. They're very bold. And so I'm also excited about that. Can you imagine the new generation of evangelists that are going to come out of this effort for the body of Christ, for the church around the world? So there's many different things we're accelerating to allow us to get to 100 million a year or per year of children reached around the world.
So tell us more about your plan to do this, like how you go about reaching that many children. Because I understand that you have trained over 400,000 teachers.
Yes, we have very strong training programs, and some are shorter, some are longer, all the way to 3 months. And we have the entire structure set up around the world. And so we're constantly training believers to minister to children. Many of them come to us not knowing what to do with kids spiritually. And when they complete their training, they're ready to explain the Bible, share the gospel, counsel them for the salvation. It's a wonderful, wonderful training. So that all is in place. For example, we have a program that we call SPAN, Sponsor and National. Currently, we have 1,378 field workers around the world on SPAN. None of these are in developed nations. None of these are in developed nations. They are in nations that are being developed. And so where it's very hard to raise support, and they're wonderful people. They are trained. And of course, we have to raise a lot of money every month to provide funds to these workers around the world. And if the Lord provides additional funding, we want to double that number. It's costing us about $270,000 a month to fund those workers. And we have to raise that constantly. But if God doubles that, we'll double the number of workers. Many a times these workers are volunteers and they have their jobs. And if we were able to hire sometimes $250, $300, $400 a month, hires a worker full time, and then they go out and literally reach thousands of children every year. So all the pieces are in place, the strategy, the programs. We just need to hit certain accelerators to grow this exponentially.
And where do you find these teachers from? If they have regular daytime jobs, who are they, and where do you recruit them from?
So all over the world, also in Canada and USA, for every CEF staff member, there's typically hundreds of teachers and volunteers involved in different capacities. So CEF is a very heavy volunteer base organization. And those individuals, those volunteers, are constantly receiving training that we provide, all kinds of levels of training. And so when there is funding available to turn around and hire additional staff, it's very easy to go to our pool of volunteers and challenge them to pray and consider serving the Lord full time. So we don't lack the people, we lack the finances a lot of times, but God has given us a very large crowd of gifted volunteers that are passionate about children that are willing to step into full-time ministry.
Now, you mentioned several countries that you're working in. Is CEF working in countries impacted by war, such as Ukraine?
Yes, we are. We actually, our two largest ministries in Europe, we have about 601 staff in Europe, and we have the region divided with 48 countries. And so we have about, I would say the largest two ministries in Europe are Russia and Ukraine, where we have the largest number of staff and where the largest number of children are reached. So we have about 69, 70 full-time staff in Ukraine. About 6 of them are outside of Ukraine. They had to leave because of the war. And so they're ministering to the multitudes of refugees from Ukraine. The rest, the majority of them, are all in Ukraine ministering. We constantly make trips in there from CEF of Poland, from CEF of Romania, to bring supplies, to bring gospel literature, to bring everything you could think they need, including generators and so on, so they can minister, so they can serve. And the ministry they're doing is unbelievable. We get stories all the time of some of them. We heard recently they're near the front where the war is. And so these two teachers, these two staff, when they go out to teach clubs with the children, they, with all the resources they need to pack for the club, they also bring bulletproof vests, because they're near the front. And so many times when those missiles come, the fire alarm, the alarms in the cities go off. By law, they have to stop what they're doing and run to the basements, to the bomb shelters. And as soon as they get back into the basement, they continue the Bible lesson or continue the club hour. And the kids are eager to continue learning about God. So God is doing a great ministry, actually in both countries, even though this is such a nasty, such an evil situation, this war.
That's just amazing to hear. And it's just such a different world out there, like learning the gospel when there's missiles falling all around you. But now tell us about the Good News Clubs, which are part of your American efforts, because I also understand that you now also have these Good News Clubs in Canadian schools as well.
Yes. So the Good News Club is the ministry, is sort of the flagship ministry of CEF. There are weekly Bible clubs that happen through the school year. We do them around the world. I think we have about 79,000 around the world in a given year, and it's growing all the time. In 2001, June 2001, the United States Supreme Court had made a decision on a vote 6-3 that it was constitutional for CEF to have Good News Clubs in public schools. So we have had thousands and thousands of schools with clubs. and we continue to grow that ministry. And I believe that also in Canada, there are opportunities, especially in Manitoba, for schools to open up for Bible clubs on a weekly basis.
Now, you mentioned the Supreme Court. Obviously, like things can kind of escalate with challenges because our society is becoming increasingly secular. So tell us about some of the challenges you do come across.
Some of the challenges with those school clubs is sometimes the principal or the superintendent don't want the club in there. And so they give us the runaround, and we're very gracious and patient with them and say, hey, look at the decision of the Supreme Court. If you open the school for these other groups, then you cannot exclude CEF just because we teach the Bible. Most of the time they open the door. Every so often it requires Liberty Counsel, a group of Christian attorneys that we work with, to write a letter, attorney to attorney letter. Most of the time that letter unlocks that resistance, but every so often there's principals or superintendents that dig their heels and say, no, you won't come. And in those situations, we'll file a lawsuit. We have one right now in a school district in Rhode Island. After 2 years of waiting and asking for them to open the facility and them saying no to us and allowing other groups to open. So that lawsuit is going on right now. Again, we're not filing a lawsuit for money. We just want the right to be treated like other groups. Other attacks that we've received have come over the recent years, I would say the last 7, 8, 9 years from atheist groups. They attack us in a variety of ways. More recently, the Satan clubs, which are basically atheists trying to create a big splash in the community with their, scary Satan clubs to force the school leadership and the community to push them out. And in order to push them out legally, they have to push out our club. That's their strategy. Is nothing but another attempt, because they've been at this for a number of years now. It's another attempt at pushing Bible clubs out like the Good News Club. And that's basically what's happening. But in all these cases, our Good News Clubs just keep growing. I mean, God has kept the doors open, and people that learn about the opportunity to teach the Bible in public schools, they get fired up and they get behind us and support us. And it's a wonderful thing to see what God is doing.
I had no idea that was part of a strategy to get Christian groups out. That's really interesting that you mentioned that. I'd never thought of it that way. Moses, so we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your interest. I invite the viewers to go to cfonline.com and check out where the closest CF office is to where they live and get involved.
Moses Estevez is the Executive Vice President of Child Evangelism Fellowship. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.